The war room on Station Karthos had processed catastrophes before. It had recorded the fall of entire star systems in single-line updates. It had archived extinction-level events under clean numerical identifiers. It had watched civilizations vanish behind red markers on a map that updated every 6 minutes with quiet, clinical precision. It was designed for this. The walls were matte black, not for aesthetics, but because brighter colors caused distraction during long-duration strategic observation. The lighting was dim, evenly distributed, optimized for species, with different visual spectrums. At the center of the room floated the map, three-dimensional, slowly rotating, impossibly detailed. 52 inhabited systems. 31 of them were red. No alarms were sounding. They had stopped using alarms years ago, when it became clear there would always be something to alarm about. Now the systems simply updated, and the people inside the room learned to read silence the way others read panic. A red pulse appeared near the outer spiral. System designation: H443. Status: lost. No one reacted immediately. They had trained themselves out of that. Reaction slowed thinking, and slow thinking got more systems killed. But something shifted. Not in the room, no one moved, but in the way attention settled. Every officer, analyst, and observer became aware of the same thing at the same time, the way experienced minds sometimes converge without speaking. That system wasn't supposed to fall yet. A Dorothy analyst leaned forward slightly, her long fingers hovering just above her console, without touching it. She didn't need to check the projections. She already knew them. Advance rate just increased, she said quietly. No one asked for clarification. The numbers were already updating. Projected loss curve recalculated in real time. The red expansion lines adjusted, spreading forward like a slow infection that had suddenly decided to accelerate. Estimated time to total regional collapse. Revised. Down by 12 years. That was new. For 63 years, the enemy had advanced with absolute consistency. 2 systems per standard year. No deviation. No acceleration. No hesitation. It was the single reliable constant in a war defined by loss. Until now. A second red pulse appeared. System designation: V991. Status: contested, lost. That one got a reaction. Not outwardly. No shouting. No sudden movement. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that happens when a room full of very intelligent beings all arrive at the same conclusion, and none of them want to be the first to say it. The pattern had changed. And if the pattern had changed, then everything built around predicting it was now wrong. At the far end of the room, partially obscured by a structural column, a human observer sat alone. He had not spoken since the briefing began. He had not interacted with any console. He had not even looked at the casualty report scrolling along the side displays. He was watching the map, not the red zones, not the blinking system alerts, the space between them. Another update flickered. The advanced vectors adjusted again, subtle but measurable. The enemy lines were no longer following the previous distribution logic. They were shifting slightly but deliberately, unpredictably. That's not pressure expansion, another analyst said. They're not pushing evenly anymore. No, someone else replied. They're choosing. That word settled heavily into the room. Choosing implied intent. Intent implied change. And change, after 63 years of absolute consistency, meant something had forced it. The room began to move then, not physically but mentally. Calculations spun up. Models recalibrated. Projections fractured into competing possibilities. All of them worse than before. At the center of it all, the map continued its slow rotation. Green shrinking, red spreading. And for the first time in over half a century, no one in the room could confidently say what would happen next. Except one. The human leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on a narrow corridor of space that none of the predictive models had highlighted yet. He studied it the way someone studies a flaw in a structure. Or an opening. For a long moment he said nothing. Then very quietly, so quietly that only the system nearest to him registered the audio, he spoke. Finally. The official designation for the conflict was Conclave Defensive Action Theta 7. No one called it that anymore. In the first decade, it had been referred to as a border crisis. In the second, a regional war. By the third, the terminology shifted toward containment failure. By the fourth, most species had stopped trying to define it at all. It was simply the war. 63 standard years of continuous retreat. The map in the center of Station Carthos did not display territory in the traditional sense. It displayed survivability. Each system was marked not by ownership, but by operational status: green for stable, yellow for contested, red for lost. There had been a time when green dominated the display. Archived records showed it clearly. A wide, uninterrupted field of stability stretching across the Orion Arm, interlinked trade routes, shared infrastructure, diplomatic corridors that had taken centuries to establish. Now those corridors were broken. Of the original 52 inhabited systems in this sector, 32 were red. 5 more flickered between yellow and red, their statuses updating so frequently that the system had begun to buffer the transitions to reduce processing load. That left 15. 15 systems supporting the combined populations of 11 species. 15 systems sustaining what remained of the conclave. Update full theater projection. A command voice said from somewhere behind the primary observation tier. The map responded instantly. It zoomed out. The local sector shrank, contextualized within a broader region of space. Neighboring clusters, auxiliary colonies, distant outposts that had once been considered too remote to matter. They mattered now. Red was spreading there too. Not as quickly. Not yet. But the pattern was the same. Always the same. The enemy did not expand randomly. It advanced with structure, clean lines, measurable vectors, precise intervals. Every movement could be tracked, analyzed, predicted. For 63 years, prediction had been the Conclave's only advantage. And even that had never been enough. They're not overextending, a Volari strategist said, her voice soft but carrying. Every advance is supported before the next begins. No gaps. No weak points. Because they don't need to rush, replied a Seni officer, scales catching the dim light as he shifted. Time is on their side. Time had always been on their side. The enemy, designated in Conclave records as the Virex Collective, did not suffer from logistical strain in the way organic civilizations did. Their supply lines were efficient, their reinforcement cycles consistent, their attrition rates irrelevant. They did not retreat. Not once in 63 years. Not from fortified systems. Not from counteroffensives. Not even from statistically unwinnable engagements. They advanced, system by system, year by year, 2 systems per standard year. Until today. A data stream expanded along the edge of the main display, projecting long-term projections. The numbers adjusted in real time, recalculating based on the newly observed acceleration. Projected remaining systems before collapse, 15. Projected survival time at previous rate, 7.5 years. Projected survival time at current rate, 5.2 years. The room absorbed that in silence. 5 years. 411 species, billions of lives, centuries of history, reduced to a countdown that could fit on a single line of text. Population density increase in core systems has reached 240% of sustainable infrastructure capacity, another analyst reported. We are already exceeding resource thresholds. Evacuation routes, someone asked. Non-viable. Peripheral systems are already compromised. That had been the cruelest part. There was nowhere left to go. The Conclave had expanded outward for centuries, building redundancy into its civilization, backup systems, secondary colonies, fallback positions designed to ensure that no single failure could cascade into total collapse. The Virex had removed those redundancies one by one. Carefully. Methodically. Like a system being dismantled by something that understood exactly how it had been built. They're not just advancing, the Volari strategist said again, quieter now. They're simplifying the board. No one disagreed. At the far side of the room, a secondary display activated, showing fleet distribution across the remaining green systems. Total available Conclave warships in sector, 2,840. Operational readiness, 71%. Projected combined enemy fleet presence, Estimated 4,300 vessels. Confirmed sightings, 3,900. The gap had always been there. The conclave compensated with coordination, with multi-species tactics, with adaptive strategies that leveraged diversity as strength. It had slowed the advance, but it had never stopped it. Even with full mobilization, we cannot match their numbers, the Sendi officer said flatly. We never have, someone replied. Another layer of data appeared, historical engagements. Lines of conflict stretching back decades. Defensive lines drawn, held, and eventually broken. Counteroffensives launched with full coalition support, each one ending the same way. Temporary resistance. Eventual loss. The pattern repeated so consistently that it had become doctrine.
Delay.
Withdraw. Reinforce.
Repeat.
They fight the same war every time, the Volari strategist said. And we lose it every time, the Senti officer answered. That was the truth of it. Not incompetence. Not lack of effort. The Conclave had thrown everything it had into this war. Every ship, every innovation, every alliance. And the result had been survival. Temporary. Decreasing. Measured in years that were now being reduced to months. At the center of the room, the map shifted again. Another recalculation. The new advance vectors stabilized into a pattern slightly different from before, but no less precise. If anything, more so.
They've optimized, someone said.
The word felt wrong. Optimization implied improvement. Improvement implied that what had come before had been insufficient. And nothing about the Virex's previous advance had suggested insufficiency. Unless the thought didn't fully form. It didn't need to. Because across the room, multiple analysts reached the same conclusion at the same time. They've encountered something, the Doherty analyst said slowly. Something that forced adjustment, the Volari added. Or something they're preparing for, the Sendi finished. Silence followed. Not fear. Something sharper than that. Because for 63 years, the only unpredictable element in the war had been the Conclave. And unpredictability had never been enough. If the Virex were now the ones adapting, then whatever came next would not follow any model they had. At the far end of the room, the human observer hadn't moved. He was still watching the same section of space. The narrow corridor. The one no projection had flagged as significant. The one that, according to every model in the room, didn't matter. Another system flickered. Yellow. Then red. The map updated. 14. No one said it out loud. They didn't need to. The number was there. Visible. Unavoidable. 14 systems. 5 years. And a war that, for the first time since it began, was no longer predictable. The human's gaze didn't shift. If anything, it sharpened, like a calculation approaching completion. They called it a coordination session. That was the formal term. In practice, it was where the remaining species of the Conclave stood up, one at a time, and explained why they were still losing. The chamber adjacent to the war room was built for diplomacy, not strategy. The architecture reflected older priorities, curved seating, elevated platforms, acoustics designed to carry speech evenly across species with different auditory ranges. It had been designed for agreement. It had not been designed for this. The Dohertys spoke first. They always did. Not because of hierarchy, but because they had been fighting the longest. Ambassador Kelran stood at the center platform. Tall even by Doherty standards, his posture perfectly aligned despite the faint tremor running through his hands. His species valued composure. It was one of the few things the war had not taken from them.
Yet.
41%, he said. No introduction. No preamble. Just the number. 41% of Doherty-controlled systems have been lost in the past 30 years. Of the remaining, 8 are currently classified as unstable. 2 are projected to fall within the next standard year. The map behind him updated as he spoke, highlighting Doherty territory. There wasn't much left to highlight. Our fleet capacity has decreased by 63%. We have compensated through accelerated production, extended deployment cycles, and the reassignment of civilian vessels for military use.
A pause.
Those measures have delayed collapse by approximately 18 months. 18 months. He did not emphasize it.
He did not need to.
Our current projections indicate that without external change, Doherty space will be fully compromised within 4 standard years.
He stepped back.
No one spoke. There was nothing to respond with. The Valaria ambassador approached next. She was smaller, her species built for colder worlds, covered in fine pale fur that shifted subtly with her breathing. Valari communication relied heavily on tone and posture, nuances that many other species never fully learned to read. Right now, she was perfectly still, which meant something was wrong. "We did not have a military," she said. Her voice was quiet, not weak, just precise. For 412 years, Valari civilization operated without standing armed forces. All conflicts were resolved through negotiation frameworks and trade arbitration. A slight shift in her posture, almost imperceptible. "We built one 11 years ago." The room stayed silent. "We built 48 warships in 8 years. We trained crews. We established command structures. We adapted." Another pause. "We have 9 remaining." That landed harder than the Doherty numbers. Because it wasn't just loss. It was transformation. They had changed everything about themselves. And it still hadn't been enough. "We will continue to contribute those 9 vessels," she said. "And all associated support infrastructure." A small breath. "We regret that we cannot offer more." She stepped away. The Seni representative did not step onto the central platform immediately. He stood where he was, as if considering whether the movement was necessary. Then, after a moment, he walked forward. The Seni had been the first to encounter the Virex. 70 years ago, before the war had a name, before anyone understood what they were dealing with. Representative Thren did not look at the audience. He looked at the data feed in front of him. "Total Seni military casualties," he began, "since initial contact."
He stopped.
Adjusted something on his console. The number updated. It had grown since the last report. Revised total, 1.8 billion. No reaction. Not because it wasn't shocking, because it wasn't new. Civilian losses exceed that number by an estimated factor of 3. He scrolled. Did not pause. Confirmed destroyed systems, 12. Unconfirmed but presumed lost, 5. Remaining defensive capacity, insufficient for independent operation. He finally looked up. His eyes were steady, empty in a way that suggested they had not always been. "We have conducted 18 major counteroffensives. A beat. None have resulted in permanent territorial recovery. Another. 17 resulted in additional system loss within 2 years of execution." He let that sit. Then, "We do not have a strategy that works." That was the closest thing to emotion anyone had expressed so far. Not anger, not fear, just a statement of fact. He stepped back. The chamber felt smaller. Not physically, but in the way space feels when options disappear. The Resh delegation spoke next. Their species was broader, heavier, their voices resonant in a way that carried even without amplification. Where others spoke with restraint, the Resh spoke with force. "Even now, we have reinforced every defensive line we have drawn," their commander said. His hands were clenched at his sides. "Layered fortifications, multi-tiered orbital defense, adaptive shielding, redundant command structures." Each word hit like impact. "We have held those lines." A pause. "Until we didn't." His gaze swept the chamber. "We have fought them at every level. Ship to ship, fleet to fleet, planetary defense, guerrilla resistance after occupation."
His jaw tightened.
"They do not break. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a statement. They do not overcommit. They do not pursue recklessly. They do not make mistakes we can exploit." A breath. "They advance." He exhaled slowly. "And we move back." That was it. No numbers. No projections. Just the truth, stripped of everything else. One by one, the remaining delegations followed. Shorter statements. Less detail. Because there was less left to say. Fuel shortages. Crew fatigue. Production limits. Evacuation failures. Every report different in detail. Identical in conclusion. Nothing was working. At the edge of the chamber, the tally updated in real time. Total ships pledged for unified counteroffensive: 2,903. It looked like a large number until you compared it. Projected enemy fleet presence: 4,300. The gap was still there. It had always been there.
It would still be there.
Because numbers were not the problem. Or rather, they were not the only problem. They outlast us, someone said quietly. They outplan us, another added. They outweighed us, a third finished. The chamber fell silent again. Not the silence of politeness. Not the silence of respect. The other kind. The kind where a room full of intelligent, experienced beings all reach the same conclusion. And no one wants to be the one to say it out loud. They were going to lose. Not today. Not tomorrow. But inevitably.
Predictably.
Mathematically. At the far end of the chamber, separate from the delegation platforms, the human observer remained seated. He had not spoken. He had not reacted. He had not even taken notes. He was watching the map display projected above the chamber's center. Not the casualty overlays. Not the fleet counts. The structure. The movement. The pattern. As the final delegation stepped back, the chamber's system paused, waiting for the next speaker. There was only one left. The human platform remained unlit. For a moment, it seemed like they might not speak at all. Then, the light activated. The human stood. Before the human spoke, the system did something unusual. It replayed history. Not as a narrative. Not as a speech. As data. The map above the chamber dimmed slightly, then shifted. The current positions dissolved, replaced by an earlier snapshot, 63 years ago.
Green.
Almost entirely green. The Virex did not appear at first. That was the first thing people always forgot. They did not arrive dramatically. There was no singular invasion point, no massive fleet crossing a visible boundary. They appeared as a discrepancy. A system that stopped responding. A relay that went silent. A trade route that failed to confirm arrival. At the time, it had been categorized as a technical anomaly. Then the next system went dark. And the next. The map advanced. Year 1. A cluster of red dots. Small, isolated. Containable. Year 5. Lines began to form. Not random. Not scattered. Structured. The Virex did not expand outward in all directions. They advanced along vectors, clean, deliberate paths that connected systems in ways that optimized movement, supply, and reinforcement. Someone had once described it as watching a mind think in real time. Year 10. The Conclave responded. The first unified fleet assembled. Defensive lines drawn. Fortifications established at key junctions. The red met resistance.
And slowed.
That had been the first hope. The map zoomed slightly. Focused on a single engagement. A defensive line spanning 4 systems, reinforced with the combined fleets of 3 species. It was, at the time, the largest military concentration the Conclave had ever assembled. The Virex advance reached it.
Stopped. Paused.
For 6 months, nothing changed. The line held. Celebrations had been prepared. They were never used. Month 7. The red moved forward. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just forward. The defensive line compressed. Then broke. The systems fell in sequence. Orderly. Predictable. Inevitable. The map shifted again. Year 20. The pattern had stabilized. 2 systems per year. No deviation. No acceleration. No hesitation. Every attempt to disrupt that pattern had failed. Not catastrophically. Not with decisive defeats. With something worse. Consistency. A semi-analyst had once written, "They do not win battles. They resolve them." The replay continued. Multiple engagements layered over each other. Different species. Different tactics. Same result. The Virex adapted, but not reactively. Not in response to immediate threats. They adapted in advance. Every defensive measure encountered once was never effective again. Every strategy used twice was already countered the second time. They learn, someone had said early in the war. That had been incorrect. Learning implied time. Adjustment. Iteration. The Virex did not iterate. They integrated. The first time they encountered something, it became part of their system. The second time, it was no longer a variable. It was accounted for. The map slowed, focused on fleet engagements. Conclave ships maneuvering, adjusting formations, reacting to enemy movement. The Virex formations did not react. They executed. Their movements were not responses. They were sequences. Predefined, optimized, carried out with precision that bordered on the mechanical. Except it wasn't mechanical, because machines made errors. The Virex did not. Error rate across 63 years of engagement. Statistically insignificant. The system displayed. That line had been added 12 years into the war. It had not changed since. Another layer appeared. Retreat patterns. The Conclave withdrew frequently.
Strategically.
Necessary losses to preserve greater assets. The Virex did not withdraw. Not once. Not even when it would have been tactically advantageous. Not even when retreat would have reduced losses. They held position. Or they advanced. There was no third state. They don't need to retreat, the Volari strategist said quietly, watching the replay. Because they never put themselves in a position where retreat is required. That was the second thing people forgot. The Virex did not take risks. Not in the way organic species understood risk. Every movement they made had already accounted for every outcome. Victory was not achieved. It was calculated. The map advanced again. Year 40. The Conclave changed strategy. Instead of holding lines, they began targeting supply chains. Deep strikes. Fast-moving fleets designed to disrupt logistics behind enemy advances. It worked. Briefly. 2 supply convoys destroyed. 3 routes disrupted. The Virex response came within days. Not to defend the supply lines. To remove the need for them. Alternative routes activated. Shorter. More efficient. The disrupted pathways were never used again. The Conclave had spent 6 months planning that operation. The Virex had absorbed it in less than a week. They don't fix problems, the Sendi representative said. They eliminate the conditions that allow the problem to exist. Year 50. The map was more red than green. The Conclave had stopped attempting large-scale counteroffensives. They focused on delay, on survival, on buying time. The Virex did not change. 2 systems per year. Every year. No matter what the Conclave did. It became the only constant. A war defined by uncertainty. Anchored by one unbreakable pattern. Until now. The replay ended. The current map returned. Red dominating. Green shrinking. And the new data, subtle, but undeniable. The pattern had shifted.
They accelerated, someone said.
No, the Doherty analyst replied. They adjusted. That word settled into the room. Adjustment implied necessity. Necessity implied disruption. Something had forced the Virex
to change.
For 63 years, they had not needed to. They had advanced at a pace that guaranteed victory. Slow.
Certain.
Unstoppable. If that pace had changed, then something somewhere had made their certainty less certain. The implication was not comforting. Because whatever could force the Virex to adjust was not something the Conclave understood. And in a war defined by understanding, that was the most dangerous variable of all. At the center of the chamber, the human stood in silence. He had watched the entire replay without moving, without reacting, as if he had seen it before, or worse, as if he had expected it. The light above his platform brightened slightly, signaling that the system recognized him as the next speaker. For a moment he did not speak. He looked at the map, at the red, at the green, at the shifting pattern that no longer followed the rules everyone had built their strategies around. Then he lifted his gaze, not to the delegations, not to the commanders, but to the space above the map, as if he were looking past it, past the data, past the war, at something else entirely. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, not loud, not forceful, just certain. They're not unstoppable, he said. The room didn't react. Not yet. Because for 63 years, every piece of evidence said otherwise. He let the silence hold for a moment longer. Then he added, They're just solving the wrong problem. That made people look at him. The silence after his statement held longer than it should have. Not because it was dramatic, because it was incorrect. Or, at least, everything the room knew said it had to be. The Virex were unstoppable. 63 years of data supported that conclusion with a consistency no theory had ever managed to break. Entire civilizations had been reduced to that single understanding. And this human, this observer, who had not spoken once in the entire session, had just dismissed it. They're just solving the wrong problem. The words lingered in the chamber like something misplaced. The Doherty ambassador was the first to respond. Ambassador, Kelrin said carefully, the title used out of protocol rather than familiarity. If you have an alternative analysis, this would be the appropriate time to present it. Measured, controlled, but there was strain under it, because no one in that room had the patience left for vague statements. The human inclined his head slightly. Acknowledgement, not apology. I do, he said. He stepped forward. Not to the central platform.
He didn't need to.
The system adjusted automatically, projecting his position into the room's focal space. The map shifted subtly behind him, dimming just enough to center attention without disappearing. My name is Adrian Vale, he said. Strategic Analysis Division, Human Confederacy. No embellishment. No rank emphasis. Just identification. He didn't look at the delegations. He looked at the map. You've been fighting a responsive war, he continued, for 63 years. A slight movement in the room. Not disagreement. Recognition. You observe their advance. You build a defense. They reach it, apply pressure, and eventually the defense fails. You withdraw, establish a new line, and repeat. He gestured lightly toward the historical overlays still lingering at the edge of the display. It's consistent. It's logical. It's also exactly what they're designed to exploit. The Sendi representative narrowed his eyes. That is not new information, Thren said. We are aware of our situation. Vale nodded once. I know. He paused. Not for effect. For precision. The issue isn't that you're losing engagements, he said. It's that you're participating in a system where losing is the only possible outcome. That landed. Because it wasn't an insult. It was worse. It was a framing. You're assuming the objective is territorial control, Vale continued. That the war is about systems, resources, population centers. He glanced briefly at the casualty data. It isn't. A quiet shift passed through the room.
Small.
But noticeable. Then what is it? The Volari ambassador asked. Vale looked back at the map. At the red. They're optimizing stability, he said. No one spoke. Because no one immediately understood what that meant. They don't advance because they need territory, Vale clarified. They advance because stable systems expand. Unstable ones don't. He let that settle. They're not conquering you, he said. They're resolving you. That word again. Resolve. Like a calculation reaching completion. They remove variables, Vale continued. Uncertainty. Resistance. Complexity. Every system they take reduces the number of independent actors in the environment. He gestured toward the remaining green zones. You're not losing space, he said. You're losing entropy. Silence. Deeper now. Because this was different. This wasn't strategy. This was perspective. And the reason you can't stop them, Vale said, is because you're trying to win inside their model. He turned then. For the first time, he looked directly at the assembled delegations. You're trying to be more stable than they are. A pause. That's not possible. No one interrupted him, because even if they didn't fully understand, something about the way he was saying it felt correct. The Resh commander leaned forward slightly. If not stability, he said, then what? Vale didn't hesitate. Disruption. The word cut cleanly through the chamber. Not new, but in this context, different. You've attempted disruption tactically, Vale said. Supply strikes. Deep incursions. Variable formations. He shook his head slightly. They adapted. They always adapt, the Seni representative said. Vale nodded. Because those disruptions still operate within their predictive framework. He stepped closer to the map. The projection responded, zooming in slightly on the contested regions. You introduce variation, he said. They incorporate it. You introduce new tactics, they integrate them. The system remains intact. His hand moved, not touching the display, but guiding attention. What you haven't done, he said quietly, is break the system itself. That changed something in the room. Because now there was a direction, a possibility, even if it wasn't understood yet. Kaurin spoke again, slower this time. And you believe this is possible. It wasn't skepticism. Not exactly. More like testing the weight of the idea. Vale met his gaze. Yes. A single word. No emphasis. No justification. Just certainty. The Valari ambassador tilted her head slightly, a subtle shift in posture that indicated focused attention. And how, she asked, do you propose to do that? Vale looked at her, then back at the map. Then, he stepped back. Not forward. Not toward the center. Away from it. As if what he was about to say didn't require the space everyone else had been using. The Human Confederacy, he said, will be contributing one vessel to the unified counteroffensive. The chamber didn't react immediately, because the sentence didn't process correctly. One vessel. Against. The numbers were still visible. 2,903 conclave ships. 4,300 enemy.
1.
The system itself seemed to hesitate, as if waiting for correction. There wasn't one. Vale remained still. The silence stretched. Then, clarify, the Sendi representative said.
Not sharply. Carefully.
As stated, Vale replied. One vessel. Now the reaction came. Not loud. Not chaotic. But immediate. A ripple through the room. Postures shifting, attention sharpening, multiple delegations leaning toward their interfaces simultaneously. That is not a contribution, the Resh commander said, his voice low but carrying. That is a gesture. It is sufficient, Vale said. That triggered something. Sufficient. Kelrin repeated, the word measured, as if he were testing its structure. Vale nodded. Yes. The Valari ambassador leaned forward slightly, her composure intact, but strained at the edges. Ambassador Vale, she said, we have just presented a unified force of nearly 3,000 vessels, and even that is projected to be inadequate. Her voice remained calm. But you are suggesting that one ship. Correct. He didn't let her finish. Not rudely. Just directly. The chamber tightened. Because now it wasn't confusion. It was contradiction. You are either withholding information, the Senti representative said slowly, or you are making a statement. Vale considered that. Briefly.
Both, he said.
That did not help. What kind of vessel?
Kelrin asked.
Finally, a concrete question. Vale's gaze shifted slightly. Just enough to acknowledge it. Designation, CNS Axiom Breaker. The name appeared on the display automatically. No additional data followed. No class. No specifications. Just the name. That file is incomplete, a Doherty analyst said immediately. It is sufficient, Vale repeated. The phrase again. Sufficient. It was starting to feel less like reassurance, and more like a boundary. The Resh commander's expression hardened. You expect this assembly, he said, to commit to a coordinated operation alongside an asset you refuse to properly identify? Vale looked at him.
Steady.
Yes. No hesitation. No softening. Just,
yes.
The room went very quiet. Not the earlier silence. Not shared realization. This was something else. Tension. Because this didn't follow the rules. Wars had structure. Contributions had scale. Commitments had weight. And this was none of those things. At the edge of the chamber, the tally updated. Human Confederacy. 1 vessel. Total. 2,904. The number looked almost unchanged. Insignificant. And yet, every being in the room was now looking at that single line. Not because of what it added, but because of what it implied. Vale stepped back slightly, returning to his original position, as if his part in this phase of the conversation was complete. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, quietly, from somewhere near the rear of the chamber, A single question emerged. Not directed. Not formal. Just spoken. What does one ship do that 3,000 can't? Vale didn't answer immediately. He looked at the map again. At the red. At the pattern. At the system everyone else was still trying to fight inside. Then he said, "It changes the equation." The session did not end. It fractured. Not formally. No declaration. No adjournment. But the structure dissolved the moment Vale stepped back. Clusters formed almost immediately, delegates leaning toward one another, low-voiced exchanges layered over the chamber's controlled acoustics. Data requests began firing across internal networks, flagged, prioritized, escalated. One ship. The phrase moved through the room faster than any official communication. One ship. Not as information. As a problem. At the center display, the system attempted to compensate for the sudden surge in queries. Additional data layers flickered in and out. Fleet comparisons, projection adjustments, simulation overlays recalculating the contribution delta of a single vessel against a multi-thousand ship operation. Every model returned the same result. Negligible. Statistically irrelevant. The system tagged the input as noise. The room did not. "Pull the registry," the Sendi representative said sharply to his adjutant. "Already attempting," came the reply. "Human Confederacy military records. Restricted. Override. Denied." That drew attention. Not because denial was unusual, because of how quickly it had happened. The Doherty analysts were already working. Multiple consoles lit up along their platform, long fingers moving with practiced precision as they dug through shared conclave databases, cross-referencing ship classifications, historical deployments, joint operation records. Nothing. No record of Axiom Breaker in any prior engagement. One of them reported. "Check alternate designation protocols," Kelrin said. "Already did." No matching hull signature. No registry alias. No classified crosslink. "That's not possible," the Resh commander muttered. "It is," the analyst replied without looking up. "It just means it's never been shared." That was worse. Because every other species in the conclave had been bleeding information into the shared pool for decades. It was how they survived: collective knowledge, distributed strategy, transparency enforced by necessity. If the humans had a vessel, a capability, that had never been disclosed, then they hadn't been fighting the same war. At the edge of the chamber, a Volari technician accessed a secondary diplomatic channel, running a deeper query through less formal pathways. Sometimes information moved more freely outside official systems. "Partial hit," she said after a moment. Every head in her vicinity turned. "Source?" "Archived maintenance log. Indirect reference. Display." The data appeared in a small window above her console. Sparse. Fragmented. But real. Hull designation unknown. Operational status. Active. Classification note. Do not include in standard fleet rotation. That line alone shifted the air in the room. "Expand context," the Volari ambassador said. The technician hesitated. "There's another note. Read it." A pause. Then, "Do not initiate external inspection without command authorization. Previous attempts resulted in incident." Silence. Not confusion. Not exactly. Something closer to recognition. Because everyone in that room understood what it meant when a military file used the word incident without elaboration. It meant the explanation was worse than the summary. "What kind of incident?" the Resh commander demanded. "No additional data attached," the technician replied. "No follow-up report. No classification extension. Just that." For words. Previous attempts resulted in incident. They sat there, doing far more work than 4 words should be able to do. At the far side of the chamber, the Doherty analysts had shifted focus. "If the registry is empty, we analyze indirectly," one said. "Sensor records. Long-range scans. Any unidentified contacts that match the naming pattern." "Already running," another replied. "Filtering for human-origin vessels outside standard classification." The results populated slowly. Too slowly. Because there were very few. Human fleet data was, by conclave standards, unusually clean. Well documented. consistent, predictable, except for, there, one analyst said. A single entry highlighted. Not a match.
A gap.
A region of recorded space where sensor data had smoothed over. Not missing. Not corrupted. Adjusted. Explain, Kelrin said. The analyst leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. It's not absence, she said. It's correction. She expanded the data, overlaying raw sensor logs with processed output. The difference was subtle, but undeniable. Something had been present. And then, it hadn't. Not because it left. Because the record no longer showed it being there. That's not possible, someone said. The analyst didn't look away from the display. It shouldn't be, she agreed. Across the room, more stations began reporting similar anomalies. Tiny inconsistencies in long-term observation logs. Moments where data aligned too perfectly. Where variance had been removed. Not enough to trigger alerts. Not enough to be noticed. Unless you were specifically looking for it. Unless you already suspected something was there. Someone's been editing sensor history, the CENI representative said. Not someone, the Doherty analyst corrected. Something. That distinction mattered. Because no known conclave system had that capability. Not at that scale. Not without leaving a trace. And yet, the traces were there.
Now.
Because they were being looked for.
Because the question had been asked.
Because one human had said. One ship. At the human platform, Vale had not moved. He was aware of the activity. The searches. The discoveries. The rising tension as the room collectively realized. This wasn't a bluff. This wasn't underestimation. This was something else. The Valari ambassador turned toward him. Ambassador Vale, she said, her voice controlled but no longer neutral. You understand that withholding this level of information. I'm not withholding it, Vale said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't interrupt harshly. He just
spoke.
And the sentence stopped. He met her gaze. You don't have access to it, he clarified. That was worse. Then provide it, the Resh commander said. Vale shook his head once. Not here. Why? A simple question. Vale considered it. Then, because anything said in this room is recorded, distributed, and analyzed across 11 intelligence frameworks within the next 6 minutes. He glanced briefly at the central system. 5 now. No one denied that. Some of what that ship does, Vale continued, is not something we're going to explain in a room where it becomes part of a shared archive accessible to the same models the Virex have been countering for 63 years. That landed. Hard. Because it reframed everything. Not secrecy for control. Secrecy for function. If they can predict it, Vale said quietly. It doesn't work. Silence again. But different now. Because now, there was something else in the room. Not hope. Not yet. But possibility. Dangerous. Uncertain. But real. Kelrin exhaled slowly. You're asking us to trust something we don't understand, he said. Vale nodded. Yes. No elaboration. No persuasion. Just yes. The CENI representative leaned forward slightly. And if we refuse? Vale looked at him. Not challengingly. Not defensively. Just directly. Then you continue doing exactly what you've been doing, he said. A beat. For the next 5 years. No threat. No emphasis. Just the math. That ended the argument. Because there wasn't one. Not really. At the edge of the chamber, the system updated again. Another system flickered. Yellow. Holding. For now. 14 remained. The room quieted. Not because questions had been answered. Because they hadn't. Because the unknown had just become more important than the known. At the center of it all, the name still hovered on the display. CNS Axiom Breaker. No specifications. No classification. No explanation. Just a name. And the growing realization that whatever it was, it had been in the war longer than anyone knew. Watching. Waiting. Uncounted. Unseen. And now, for the first time, it was being sent. The Axiom Breaker arrived without announcement. No transmission. No approach vector. No entry request. At 3:17 station time, every sensor array on Station Carthos updated simultaneously. Not with a warning, with a correction. A new contact appeared in orbit, already inside the defensive perimeter. For 0.8 seconds, the system flagged it as a data error. Then it stabilized. Designation: unknown vessel. Origin: Human Confederacy. Distance: 1,200 kilometers. No one in the war room spoke, because no one had seen it enter. Rewind sensor logs, Kelrin ordered. The system complied instantly. The last 5 minutes replayed across auxiliary displays. Empty space. Station rotation. Standard traffic lanes. No anomaly. Extend to 10 minutes. Nothing. 30. Nothing. The playback showed uninterrupted continuity. Clean, consistent, verified. No distortion. No signal spike. No entry event. The ship had not arrived. It had become present. That's not possible, the Seni tactical officer said under his breath. The Doherty analyst didn't respond immediately. She was already comparing raw sensor feeds against processed output, looking for the same thing they had seen earlier. The smoothing. The correction. It's in the raw data, she said finally. Barely. She expanded the feed, stripped away layers of system optimization, predictive interpolation, and noise reduction. The image degraded. Clarity dropped. But something emerged. A shadow. A discontinuity so slight it would have been ignored under normal conditions. A shape that did not resolve until you knew where to look. There, she said. Now, everyone saw it. Not clearly. Not fully. But enough to understand the problem. The axiom breaker had not bypassed the sensors. It had been inside their margin of error. The main display shifted. Focused. Enhanced. The ship came into view. And for a moment, the room forgot how to process what it was seeing. Human ships, as a rule, followed a recognizable design language. Streamlined hulls. Symmetrical structures. Functional elegance shaped by centuries of engineering preference. The axiom breaker did not. It was wrong. Not in a way that suggested damage. In a way that suggested intention. The hull was angular, but not uniformly so, as if sections had been added at different times without concern for cohesion. External structures ran along its surface in asymmetrical patterns, some recessed, others protruding at irregular intervals. It looked layered, not constructed, accumulated. Scale? The Resh commander asked. Length approximately 1.9 kilometers, a technician replied. Mass uncertain. Uncertain. Density readings are inconsistent. That drew attention. Inconsistent how? The technician hesitated. Sections of the hull are returning different material signatures. Some of it matches known human composites. Some of it doesn't match anything in the Conclave database. The room absorbed that. Because unknown materials were rare. Extremely rare. Power output? The Seni representative asked. Low, came the reply. Minimal emissions. Reactor signature is. Another pause. Stable but not behaving like a standard output curve. Meaning it looks like it's doing less than it should be capable of. A quiet shift passed through the room. Holding back. That was the implication. The ship was not at full output. And even at minimal, it had just appeared inside a secured perimeter without detection. At the edge of the display, a secondary alert triggered. External fleet sensors, long-range arrays positioned beyond the station's immediate control, had updated. The same contact appeared across all of them. Simultaneously. No delay. No propagation. That's not how signal travel works, someone said. No, the Doherty analyst agreed. It isn't. Which meant, whatever the ship was doing, it wasn't just avoiding detection. It was altering how detection itself functioned. At the center of the war room, the map adjusted again. Not the strategic map. The local space model. The axiom breaker, S position stabilized. No drift. No micro-adjustments. It sat in orbit with a stillness that felt deliberate. Most ships, even in idle, made constant corrections. Thrusters fired in microbursts. Systems compensated for gravitational variance, for station movement, for external interference. This one didn't. It held position like something that had already accounted for every variable. "Open a channel," Calren said. The communication officer initiated the request. Standard diplomatic frequency. Encoded. Acknowledged. There was a pause. Then, a voice. Female.
Come.
Unhurried. "Station Carthos. This is Commander Elia Mar, says Axiom Breaker." No static. No transmission lag. The voice arrived, as if it had always been there. "Your arrival was not logged," Calren said.
A beat.
"Correct," Mar replied. No explanation. No apology. Just.
Correct.
The Resh commander leaned forward. "You entered a secured defensive perimeter, without authorization." "Yes." The same tone.
Flat.
Not defensive. Not challenging. Just factual. That was unsettling. Because it removed the usual structure of confrontation. There was no escalation. No resistance. Just acceptance. "Explain your method of entry," the Senti representative said.
A pause.
Longer this time. Not hesitation. Consideration. "Negative," Mar said. The word was simple. Absolute. The room tightened. "Commander," Calren began, his voice carefully controlled, "you are operating within a unified conclave." "I understand where I am," Mar said.
Still calm.
Still even. "But that information is not part of this exchange."
Another boundary. Clear.
Unmovable. At the human platform, Vale had not intervened. He was watching the display, the ship, the reactions, as if confirming something. "Then provide operational parameters," the Volari ambassador said. "Your role in the counteroffensive. Your integration requirements." This time, Mar did not pause. "We do not integrate." That was new. "What does that mean?" the Resh commander demanded. "It means," Mar said, "you will continue your current deployment." A slight shift in tone. Not stronger, but sharper. "We will operate independently." Silence. Because that contradicted everything. Multi-species coordination had been the Conclave's greatest strength. It was the only way they had managed to survive this long. And this ship, this one vessel, was rejecting it. "You intend to conduct independent operations in an active war zone," the Seni representative said slowly. "Yes." "With no support." "Yes." "With no coordination." A fraction of a pause. Then, "Correct." The words settled heavily into the room. Because now the implications were clear. This wasn't reinforcement. This wasn't support. This was something else. Something that did not fit inside the existing structure of the war. At the edge of the display, a new data stream appeared. External monitoring. Enemy detection networks. The Conclave had spent decades building intercept systems along the Virex border. Passive listeners that captured fragments of enemy communication, enough to track movement patterns, to anticipate advances. Those systems updated. A spike in activity. Not large. Not dramatic. But immediate. "They've detected it," the Doherty analyst said. "Already?" someone asked. "It hasn't moved," another replied. "It doesn't need to." The intercept data, refined. Translated. Analyzed. A single line emerged. Virex automated threat assessment. New contact registered. Threat rating. 9.3. The room went still. Because that number meant something. No Conclave vessel had ever been rated above 7.4. Not the largest fleets. Not the most advanced warships. Nothing. And this single ship had just exceeded that by a margin no one had seen before. "And it hasn't done anything," the Volari ambassador said quietly. "No weapons. No maneuvers. No signals beyond basic communication. It had arrived. That was all. And the enemy, the Virex, had assigned it a higher threat level than anything in 63 years of war." At the center of the room, the Axiom breaker remained perfectly still. Silent. Unmoving. As if it didn't need to prove anything. As if its presence was already enough. Commander Mar's voice came through again. We will begin operations in 48 hours. No build-up. No explanation. Just a timeline. What operations? Kelrin asked. A pause. Then, you'll see the effects. The channel closed. Not abruptly. Just finished. No one spoke. Because there was nothing to say. The ship was there. The enemy had noticed. The numbers didn't make sense. The rules didn't apply. And for the first time in 63 years, the Conclave was not the one trying to understand the war. They were the ones being left behind by it. At the edge of the display, the threat rating remained 9.3. Unchanged, unexplained, and impossible to ignore. The briefing was scheduled 12 hours after the Axiom Breaker's arrival. It took that long for the Conclave to stop arguing. Not because the arguments were resolved, because they reached the point where repetition replaced progress. One ship, independent operation, no integration. Every established doctrine rejected in a single conversation. By the time the commanders assembled in the strategic chamber, the mood had shifted from resistance to calculation. If this was going to happen, then they needed to understand it. Commander Elia Mar did not arrive alone. 2 officers accompanied her. One stood slightly behind her, posture relaxed but attentive, tactical, by the look of it. The other remained near the chamber entrance, not participating, not observing the map, watching the room. That detail did not go unnoticed. Mar stepped to the display. She did not greet the room. She did not acknowledge the tension.
She looked at the map.
The same way Vale had. The same way. As if she wasn't seeing it for the first time. You've been fighting a positional war, she said. No introduction. No build-up. Just the statement. The Resh commander exhaled slowly. We are aware. Mar nodded once. I know. She reached out, not touching the interface, but prompting it. The map shifted, zooming past the contested zones, past the front lines, deeper, into Virex-controlled space. The room tightened. That region wasn't usually displayed in strategic briefings. Not because it was forbidden, because it wasn't useful. No conclave force had operated there in decades. Everything you've shown me, Mar said, is focused on where they are. She turned slightly. You should be focused on how they function. The map changed again. Lines appeared, thin at first, then multiplying, connecting systems, flow patterns, logistical pathways, the hidden structure beneath the war, supply routes, energy distribution, command relays, a network, not visible in standard projections, not emphasized in most models, because it wasn't where the fighting happened. This, Mar said, is the war. Silence. Because suddenly, the map looked different. Not like territory, like a system. They don't win because they're stronger, she continued. They win because this works. Her hand moved slightly. One of the lines dimmed, then disappeared. The system recalculated. A ripple spread across the network. Minor, localized, compensated for within seconds. They've built redundancy, the Seni representative said. Mar nodded. Correct. Another line disappeared. Then another. Different regions. Different paths. The ripples overlapped.
Slowed.
Then stabilized. They route around disruption, the Volari ambassador said. Yes. Mar stepped closer. Now her focus was precise. Because every disruption you've attempted has been predictable. She looked at them. You hit supply lines near the front. A node lit up. You hit communication relays within operational range. Another node. You apply pressure where your fleets can reach. She paused. They expect that. Her hand moved again. The map shifted, zooming out further, past the contested zones, past the front, into deep Virex space. A region no conclave fleet had entered in 63 years. The room went still, because this was theoretical.
At best.
Here, Mar said. She highlighted a cluster. 3 systems. Connected. Central. Primary repair and redistribution hubs. The Senti representative frowned. We have records of those. Yes, Mar said. And you've never touched them. A beat. They're 400 light-years behind the line, the Resh commander said. Any strike force would be detected before. Strike forces get detected, Mar said. She zoomed further.
Paths appeared.
Not straight lines.
Curved.
Irregular. Avoiding known patrol routes. Avoiding monitored zones.
6 of them. Different.
Independent. A single ship doesn't look like a strike force. Silence. Because now they were starting to see it. Even if you reach them, the Valaria ambassador said carefully, one ship cannot destroy. We're not destroying them, Mar said. That cut cleanly. We're removing their inputs. Her hand shifted again. New lines appeared.
Smaller.
Feeding into the hubs. Raw materials. Energy supply. Transport corridors. Factories don't fail when you attack them, she said. They fail when they have nothing to work with. She dimmed 3 points. Not the hubs. The lines feeding them. The map recalculated. Slower this time, because the disruption was deeper. More complex. They'll reroute, the Senti representative said. Yes, Mar replied. And while they reroute, another line disappeared. Then another. 3 separate arteries. Different sectors. Same system. The ripple didn't stabilize. It spread. Delays.
Gaps.
Mismatch. Now they're solving a problem they didn't plan for, Mar said.
She looked at them.
And while they're solving it, the map shifted again. Different region. Different network. We move here. Communication grid. High command relay structure. The backbone. If this goes down, the Resh commander said slowly, their divisions lose coordination. Not immediately, Mar said. But they lose certainty. That word again.
Certainty.
They rely on synchronized movement, she continued. Shared information. Predictable flow. Her gaze sharpened slightly. We take that away. The Seni representative leaned forward. How long can you maintain that disruption? Mar considered the question. Long enough. Not a number. Not a metric. Just enough. And then, the Valaria ambassador asked. Mar didn't answer immediately.
She looked at the map.
At the network. At the system that had defined the war for 63 years. Then she said, they start making decisions without full information.
Silence.
Because that had never happened. Not once. Inconsistent decisions, the Sendi representative said quietly. Yes. Diverging movements. Yes. Conflicting priorities. Mar nodded. Yes. The room shifted. Not physically. Mentally. Because now the impossible thing had a shape. They don't know how to handle that, Mar said. Her voice was still calm. Still even. But there was something under it now. Not emotion.
Certainty.
They've never had to. That was the core of it. Not strength. Not numbers. Experience. The Virex had never fought a war where they didn't control the system. They don't fight chaos, Mar said. They eliminate it. A pause. We're going to give them more than they can eliminate. The Resh commander exhaled slowly. And this requires one ship. Mar looked at him. Yes. No hesitation. No elaboration. Just, yes. The Valaria ambassador studied the map. The lines. The disruptions. The cascading effects. The plan is sound, she said quietly. Not agreement. Acknowledgement. But it relies on capabilities we do not understand. Mar nodded. Yes. And you expect us to trust that? Another nod. Yes. The Seni representative leaned back slightly, studying her, studying the map, studying the impossible shift from 63 years of failure to something that might actually work. What happens, he asked slowly, if it doesn't? Mar didn't look away from the display. Then nothing changes, she said. A beat. You continue losing. No drama. No threat. Just
reality.
That settled it. Because the risk was not greater than the certainty they already had. Kelrin spoke. Quietly. What do you need from us? Mar turned from the map. Finally. Nothing, she said. That caught them off guard. Hold your positions, she clarified. Maintain pressure at the front. She glanced at the display. Let them keep watching you. A slight pause. Every sensor they point at you. Her gaze returned to the deeper map. Is a sensor they're not pointing somewhere else? The implication was clear. Distraction. Misdirection. The entire conclave fleet. As a decoy, the room absorbed that. And didn't reject it. Because for the first time, it didn't feel like desperation. It felt like design. Mars stepped back. The map stabilized. The disrupted lines still visible. The system fragile. For the first time. We leave in 48 hours, she said. No ceremony. No final statement. Just a timeline. She turned. Her officers followed. At the door, she paused briefly. Not turning fully. Just enough. They're not unstoppable, she said. A slight echo of Vale's words. Then, they've just never been forced to stop. And she left. The axiom breaker left without departure. At 2 o'clock station time, it was in orbit. At 2:01, it wasn't. No acceleration curve. No engine flare. No detectable transition. Every sensor array on Station Carthos confirmed the same thing. The ship had been present. Then it had not. Track it, Cowan ordered. We can't, the tactical officer replied immediately. Last known vector? None. Estimate. Unavailable. The room held that for a moment. Then, monitor the border, the Sendi representative said. If it crosses into Virex space, we'll see the reaction. That they could do. The Conclave had spent decades building that capability. A lattice of passive intercept stations along the edge of enemy-controlled space. Listening. Always listening. They turned their attention outward. And they waited. Day 1. Nothing. No spike in communication traffic. No deviation in patrol routes. No anomaly in supply movement. The Virex continued exactly as they had for 63 years. Advancing. 2 systems per year. Predictable.
Certain.
The analysts logged it. No change. But there was a difference. Not in the data. In the room. Because now, they were waiting for something to happen.
Day 2.
A minor fluctuation. So small it almost didn't register. Senti intercept logs recorded a 2.3% increase in internal communication volume along the Eastern Supply Corridor. Routine variance, one analyst said. Within tolerance, another confirmed. They flagged it. Low priority. Monitoring only. No report sent. Day 3. The fluctuation didn't normalize. It grew. 5%. Then 7%. Not chaotic. Not erratic. Just off. They're rerouting something, the Volari analyst said. From what? The Resh commander asked. No answer. Because nothing had been reported lost. No destroyed convoys. No engagement logs. Just traffic adjusting.
Slightly.
Uncomfortably. Day 4. It stopped being small. At 6:12, 2 Virex supply convoys failed to arrive at their designated nodes. No distress signals. No debris. No combat signatures. They simply didn't show up. Confirm loss, Calrin said. Confirmed, the Sendi analyst replied. No recovery signals. No fallback routing. That was new. The Virex always routed around disruption. Always. Within minutes. This was absence. At 9:40, a third convoy missed its window. Different route. Different sector. Same result.
Gone.
The intercept networks lit up. Internal Virex communication traffic spiked. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Requests. Queries. Recalculations. The first cracks.
Day 5.
The system started to strain. 3 major supply arteries showed delays. Not failure. Not collapse. Delay. Ships arriving late. Materials not aligning with schedules. Repair cycles slipping. Primary redistribution hub is reporting shortages, the Volari analyst said, pulling translated data onto the main display. Of what? Structural alloys. Energy cores. Replacement components. The Resh commander frowned. They'll compensate. Yes, the analyst said. But not immediately. That was the difference. Immediate had always been their advantage.
Now,
There was lag. Day 6. The first major deviation. At 1322, the eastern Virex flank
Stopped.
not slowed.
Stopped.
The map froze. For the first time in 63 years, the red did not move. The room didn't react at first, because the system didn't update. It simply
Didn't change.
confirm, Kelrin said quietly. Confirmed, the tactical officer replied. Advance halted across 11 divisions. Silence. Heavy. Unreal.
They've paused before, someone said.
Yes, the Sendi representative replied. But never like this. Not across an entire flank. Not simultaneously. Not without immediate correction. Communication traffic? Kelrin asked. Spiking, the analyst said. Irregular patterns. High-priority signals failing to synchronize. That was new. Virex communication was always precise, structured, perfectly timed. Now, it wasn't. Day 7. The cause became visible. At 8:03, the intercept network captured something unprecedented. A transmission. Not encrypted. Not fragmented.
Clear. Direct.
Origin. Deep Virex space. The room froze. Because Virex communications were never unencrypted. Ever. Translate, Kelrin ordered. The system processed. Struggled. Adjusted. Then, rendered. The message appeared on the central display. And for a moment, no one understood it. Because it wasn't a command. It wasn't a report. It was an explanation. She's telling them what she did, the Volari ambassador said slowly. Kelrin didn't look away from the screen. What? She's describing the disruptions, the ambassador continued. Supply lines. Communication interference. Timing. The Sendi representative leaned forward. In their language? Yes. Why? No one answered immediately. Because the answer wasn't tactical. It was something else. She's not hiding, the Resh commander said quietly. She's demonstrating. The message continued. Detailed.
Precise.
Accurate. Every disruption point. Every delay. Every variable introduced into their system. And then, at the end, a single line. Translated.
Clear.
This is the current state of your system. It will become less stable. Silence. Because that wasn't how war worked. You didn't explain your strategy. You didn't inform your enemy. Unless. That's not for us, the Volari ambassador said. No, Kelrin agreed. It isn't.
Day 8.
The effects compounded. The eastern flank remained stationary.
But now.
It was inconsistent. Individual divisions began adjusting independently. Small movements. Minor repositioning. Nothing catastrophic. But not synchronized. They're operating without full coordination, the Sendi analyst said. Kelrin nodded slowly. They're making decisions locally. That had never happened before. Not once. They don't have a unified picture anymore, the Volari ambassador added. And they don't know how to compensate for that, the Resh commander finished. The pattern was breaking, not collapsing, but fragmenting. Day 9. The first mistake. A Virex division advanced. Alone. Out of sync with adjacent units. Not aggressively. Not recklessly. Just incorrectly. It created a gap. Small. Temporary. But real. The Conclave fleet saw it. Tracked it. Waited. No one moved. Because they understood now. This wasn't their moment.
Not yet. Day 10.
The communication grid flickered.
Not down.
Not fully. But unstable. High command signals delayed. Instructions arriving out of sequence. Conflicting orders issued across multiple divisions. The intercept data became chaotic. Not random, but uncoordinated. They're arguing, the Sendi representative said. That was the closest translation. The Virex didn't argue. They processed. They resolved.
Now.
They were trying to reconcile conflicting inputs. And they didn't have a model for it. Day 11. The message changed. A second transmission. Same origin. Same clarity. Shorter. We have not destroyed your forces.
Pause.
We have stopped your system. Another pause. We can continue. The room didn't breathe. Because this wasn't just strategy. It was pressure. Controlled. Measured. Relentless. Day 12. The red moved. But not forward. Back. At first, no one believed it. The system updated. Recalculated. Confirmed. The eastern flank was retreating. Not routed. Not collapsing. Ordered. Structured. Deliberate. But backward. They've never done that, someone whispered. No one corrected them. Because it was true. 63 years. Not one retreat. Until now. Cowran stood at the center of the room, watching the map, watching the lines shift. In the opposite direction. Slowly.
Carefully.
Unmistakably. They're not losing, the Sendi representative said. No, Cowran replied. They're adapting. A pause. Then, for the first time, the room understood. This wasn't victory. Not yet. This was something else. Something more important. The system had changed, and deep inside Virex space, a single ship was still operating, unseen, untracked, and completely in control. The retreat did not accelerate. It continued, measured, controlled, deliberate. That was what made it real. If the Virex had broken, if their lines had collapsed, if their formations had scattered, the Conclave would have understood it. They had seen collapse before. They had studied it,
Modeled it. Predicted it.
This wasn't collapse. This was a decision. The eastern flank pulled back first. 11 divisions, each adjusting their position in precise increments, maintaining spacing, maintaining structure, even as they ceded ground they had held for years. The northern flank followed, slower, more cautious, testing each movement before committing to the next. The central front held for 6 hours. Then,
It moved. Backward.
across the war room, no one spoke. Because there was nothing to say that wouldn't break whatever this was. The map updated in real time. Red receding. Green, not expanding. Not yet. But breathing. For the first time in 63 years, the line was not a fixed direction. It was variable. Confirm all sectors, Cowran said quietly. Confirmed, the tactical officer replied. All Virex fronts in this region are withdrawing. Rate is consistent. No signs of disorganization. No signs of panic. No signs of failure. Just withdrawal. The Valari ambassador watched the data streams, her posture perfectly still. They are choosing to stop, she said. Yes, the Sendi representative replied. They are choosing to stop. That distinction mattered. Because it meant this was not forced. It was concluded. At the edge of the display, a new signal appeared. Priority diplomatic channel. Origin. Virex High Command. The room went still. No one moved to intercept it immediately. Because this had never happened. Not once in 63 years. Open it, Cowran said. The channel activated. No visual. Just text. Translated in real time. The message appeared at the center of the display. Formal.
Structured. Precise.
We request immediate dialogue regarding current operational conditions. Silence. Because that was the moment. Not the retreat. Not the disruption. The Virex, were asking to talk. The Senti representative exhaled slowly. They've never done that, he said. No, Cowran replied. They haven't. The message remained on the display. Unchanged. Waiting. What do we do? The Resh commander asked. The question felt strange. Out of place. Because for 63 years, the answer had always been the same. Defend. Hold. Delay.
Now.
There was no model. No precedent. Cowran didn't answer immediately. He looked at the map. At the shifting line. At the space that had opened where pressure had once been constant. Then he said, We wait. Not hesitation. Not uncertainty. Deliberate. We wait for Commander Mar to finish. The axiom breaker returned the same way it had left. Without a rival. At 1842 station time, a sensor correction occurred. And the ship was there. No approach. No transition. Just presence. The war room registered it in silence. Not confusion this time. Recognition. They were starting to understand the pattern. Not the mechanism, but the effect. Kelrin stood as the communication channel opened. "Commander Mar," he said. "Admiral," she replied. Same voice. Same calm. No change. "You've seen the developments," he said. "Yes." No elaboration. "They've opened a diplomatic channel." "I know." A pause. Then, "What happens now?" Mar did not answer immediately. For the first time, there was a slight delay. Not hesitation. Consideration. "You talk to them," she said. That was it. No strategy. No conditions. Just that. The Valaria ambassador stepped forward slightly. "They will adapt," she said. "They will rebuild their systems, restore their coordination, resume their advance." "Yes," Mar said. No disagreement. No correction. Just yes. "Then what have we achieved?" the Seni representative asked. Mar looked at the map. At the red. At the green. At the line that had finally moved. "They're uncertain," she said. The words settled into the room. "They've never been uncertain before," she continued. "Not about the outcome. Not about the system. Not about the process." She looked at them. "That certainty is part of how they win." A pause. "We removed it." Silence. Because now they understood. This wasn't about destroying fleets. It wasn't about reclaiming territory. It was about something deeper. "They don't know if the model works anymore," Mar said. "And if they don't know that..." She let the sentence hang. The Valaria ambassador finished it quietly. "They have to reconsider the war." Mar nodded. "Yes." The Resh commander crossed his arms. "And if they decide to continue anyway?" Mar's gaze didn't shift. "Then we go back in," she said. Simple. Certain. Unavoidable. No threat. No escalation. Just a fact. The room absorbed that. Because now they understood what the ship was. Not a weapon. Not in the way they had been thinking. A lever. A way to move something that had never moved before. Kelrin exhaled slowly. "They asked for dialogue," he said. "Yes." "And you believe that matters?" Mar considered that. "Then, I believe they wouldn't have asked if it didn't." That was enough. Because the Virex did not act without purpose. If they had opened a channel, then the system had changed more than anyone had realized. The negotiations began 12 hours later. Formal. Structured. Observed by every remaining conclave species. The Virex representatives did not appear visually. They transmitted. As they always had. Controlled. Precise. But different. Subtle. Difficult to quantify. But present. They acknowledged the disruptions. The supply failures. The communication inconsistencies. They did not frame them as losses. They framed them as variables. New variables. Unresolved. That language mattered. Because it meant they did not yet have a model for what had happened. And until they did, they could not proceed. "We require resolution of current instability before continuation of advance operations," the Virex transmission stated. Kelrin listened. Carefully. Then responded. "We are prepared to discuss terms. No demands. No threats. Just a door." The Virex paused. A measurable delay. Then, "Your vessel," they transmitted. "The one operating within our interior space. Provide classification." The room stilled. Because that question mattered. Kelrin did not answer immediately. He glanced just briefly at Vale. The human gave no signal. No instruction. Nothing. Kelrin looked back at the display. And said, "It is sufficient." The Virex did not respond immediately. When they did, the translation system struggled. Not with the language. With the tone. "Clarify," the transmission requested. Kelrin didn't. He let the silence hold. Because now, he understood. Numbers could be measured. Analyzed. Countered. But this was something else. After a moment, the Virex transmission shifted. "Proceed with negotiation parameters," it said. They did not ask again. The agreement took 9 days. 9 days of precision, of boundaries, of carefully defined conditions. The Virex did not concede. They adjusted. They did not admit defeat. They acknowledged instability and chose to resolve it without further expansion. A cessation, not an end, but a stop. The advance halted indefinitely. For the first time in 63 years, the war was not moving forward. The celebrations began almost immediately, different for each species. The Doherty recorded names. The Volari gathered in quiet reflection. The Resh filled entire decks with sound. Relief took many forms, but it was there, everywhere, except on the Axiom Breaker. The ship remained in orbit, silent, unchanged, as if nothing had happened. Inside the war room, Kelrin stood alone, watching the map, still mostly red, still damaged, still far from restored, but
Different.
the line had moved, just slightly, but enough. He heard the door open behind him, didn't turn. Admiral, Vale said. Kelrin nodded slightly. Ambassador. A pause. Then, how many ships like that do you have? The question had been waiting since the moment the first one arrived. Vale didn't answer immediately. He stepped beside Kelrin, looked at the map, at the red, at the green, at the space between them. Then he said, "Enough." Kelrin let out a quiet breath. Not frustration, not fear. Something else. Understanding. Because now, he knew what that meant. It didn't mean a number. It meant a threshold, a measure of sufficiency. Not excess, not dominance. Just what was required. He looked back at the map, at the war that had defined his entire career, at the line that had finally shifted. For 63 years, he said slowly, we thought survival meant holding. Vale didn't respond. Kelrin continued. We were wrong. A beat. It meant changing the game. Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not tense, just complete. Outside, beyond the station's hull, the Axiom Breaker remained motionless.
Dark.
Unremarkable. And entirely sufficient.